Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. Je parlerai en anglais. Mon français, c'est pas parfait en ce moment. J'habitais beaucoup de temps à Paris, mais là, ça fait longtemps que je le parle, donc je voudrais bien pas être trop avec des mots pas précis. Donc, comme l'introduction, merci de l'introduction. Ça fait beaucoup de temps que je travaille, là, ça fait déjà 30 ans. Je parle anglais, pardon. So I created my office in Paris 20 years ago. Now I'm moving to Italy. And always was the relation between building and climate is a very long story. So it's nothing new. We always design building in relation with climate. That was a long story. So I'm going to tell you something. And we're creating some keywords, which I think is very important for all of us to know exactly how we define our work. And so I talk this, imagine a world where beauty is so soulful and sustainable. It's the idea then, maybe the next idea of beauty is connecting with sustainability or durability. So we need to find a new aesthetic, because we connect to the last 200 years with the aesthetic is something different. So now the effort, we need to see what is the connection between sustainability and this aesthetic, the beauty of buildings. So what we are. So in the end, after so long time, so we say we design for life. So an architect, it doesn't design for ourselves. No? I'm not designing for me. I design for the others. I think you need to know. You must remember. And then we design for beauty. And I think the word beauty is very difficult to use, because beauty is what beauty is different from my point of view, from your point of view. But I think what we like to do is really the engagement design for life, design for people. No? And architecture is the key answer, how the people can live it better. And I think beauty everybody recognizes when there is a good building or a good master plan. So this is a project I will show you later. We designed a building in a little historical center of Tuscany. And we design a public space. No? And also, we try to define the role of an architect, which is become more and more difficult. It's difficult because this kind of profession will become more difficult because you need more knowledge. And so what we are the explorers and interpreters, and we are researching and storytellers, because, as you know, we need to tell stories about building. We need to tell what the story behind, and why we did that things. And we are analysts, so we are fully digital, but in the same time we are artisans, so we do by hand. So you see, it's a combining. We are in a very particular time of our profession, because we move into the digital, which is open a new era. And at the same time is a kind of profession you do your work by hand. So we have laboratory, we have many. The organization is very different. So what's happened when architects embrace all this calling? So what the answer of architecture? So I think there are some value which is very important to know, the value in architecture. So one thing I really like to tell you, for me, the word sustainability, or développement durable, I can say in French, is the creative empathy. So I like this word, because creativity is a part of our work, but you need managing creativity. If not, becomes extravaganza. It's coming something crazy. And empathy, I think, is very important, because empathy is you need to study the relation with people, with climate, with the environment. So I think the attitude is empathy. And then creativity will be controlled by the empathy. So for me, the definition of sustainability is managing between the effort of creativity, at the same time the relation of the place where we work. This is, I'll show you later, is a kindergarten. And design sustainability from every angle. So sustainability is not only about performance. That would be much easier. It's not only about that. It's about material. It's the impact of building in people, And so I think what we need to do is really have an open mind to see the sustainability is not only how we make our building, but the impact of building. What happened around the building. It's not about only the border of building, it's what the generating buildings, you know. And this is a building we did in Ghana, Africa, in a very complicated context. But you can see from that picture, there's something you can note. This building is 12 o'clock in June, end of June, so we are in summer. And you can see the building is completely under shade, which means that building need a very little energy for cooling. So what the point is sustainability? Is technology, is about technique, or is about design? For me, the key point of sustainability is how we design our building and technology. It's not about technology, it's design building properly. So in this case, you know, the cantilever floors make the building always under shade, and when it's raining, like tropical weather, the water doesn't go in and it's coming like a fountain, it just go out of the building. And redefine the beauty for our time. And for me, the beauty is something connecting to the way you design your building, how the buildings work. So I also developing with the school the idea that an architect need to know also a little bit about physics in terms of buildings, how buildings work. Because in time we make something very strange for our time. So we divide competence. You know? Everybody know a little bit. And architects, they lost the knowledge how to make building. Because we said, oh, the contractors or engineering, they do it. I'm only an architect, but you cannot do a building, sustainable building, if you don't know physics, if you don't know how air moves inside the building in a term of preliminary design, and how much this performance define the quality of building, the shape of a building. You know? This is the Agency for Environmental Protection close to Bologna. We will show you later. And also, I think, I don't know how you can translate it in French, but I think you need to have an open mind, because now is about the cross knowledge. So we need to know more after architecture. We need to know more about the social impact of buildings, sorry. So it's a moment that we need to open our field of work. So we need contamination with much more others' knowledge. And also, we need to be brave and honest, adventurous. So that means it's very important in this moment of our time to be very clear and honest about the situation. Because I feel, sometimes I say that I'm talking about Italy, then we almost did everything. Every building is zero impact, everything is zero, no? Which is not true. That's not true. So I think we need to know exactly what is the point today, what the level of performance and the quality of our building, to improving that numbers. No? And then I think the marketing and the communication will go too fast. And we're thinking then already almost done everything, but I don't believe it. So I think we need to, I'm not doing all zero building, that's for sure. But I know then I reach a level, then I know I have another work to do to reach another level, to make better buildings. So honesty for me is very important, because sustainability is not about only numbers, it's about our relation with time, our honesty. So I think this is very, very important. It's one of the key points, you know. And sustainability is more about numbers, you know. But I must tell you, I was very curious about your 3 years. You know, we only have 3 years. But the story started in 1992. You know, the first UN conference in climate change started in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro. So that's almost, I would say, almost 30 years ago. So every year is a conference on climate, every year. And then in the last 10 years, many countries, you know, they make a more regulation about buildings, no? And it's certifications, LEED, and then SQA, the France
haute qualité environnementale. So everybody, at least in Europe, they try to make rules to make our building better. No? And the roadmap is very ambitious. So 2030, half of the CO2, and 2050, zero is a very ambitious program, especially in construction, because construction field is very conservatory, so it doesn't want to change, because they know knowledge, they don't want to change the knowledge, which is in me quite honest, And I was discussing with some ecologist organization about COP21 in Paris, and then I really understand, and then COP21 was the first time the politicians decide not to make a war for energy. That was the key point of the COP21. So then what happened in the last few months, and then give it the fragility of our context. So we have a very ambitious program, and I think architects, they need to really make a lot of effort in terms of knowledge. That's data you know mainly. This 35% of global final energy is used by buildings, and 40% of energy related to emission in emissions. So I think architects, I'm talking about architects and engineers, are fully involved on the change. So and I think architects in the future will become more and more important, because they have in the hand the way we design buildings for the future. So it's a very key, important professions. And one thing we do is, as was introducing, my office always have a little unit, and now we have 6 people dedicated for research and development, because we need information to design buildings, we need. And then we make a benchmark, because we are very curious to know the CO2 emission. We are concentrating on operation. We're concentrating on the performance of the building when it's built. But if we make an analysis of 30 years life of a benchmark building, it's a concrete building, then if you go and analyze the life of a building, you discover that almost 0.5% of the CO2 emission are during the production of material construction. So it's very urgent to work in a new generation of material, because we make a lot of effort on the operational, the kilowatt, the reducing consumption on buildings during their life, but there's a lot of work to do in this part of material. And I think we need to concentrate in, not only, wood is one of the answers, but it's not the only one, because we cannot build all the buildings in wood. But it's a key work to do, how we can design buildings in a different way, like the European law about dismantle building. We can build, but we can reuse all the materials. So it's an open field of research. And that is the paradox of where we are at the moment. Is a one website called Architecture 2030 from US. And then estimating the growing of square meter on the next 40 years, about 230 billion square meter, which is more than what we build at today in the planet. So we're going to build more than the existing at today. And at the same time, this ambition is, there's a need to build more square meters, and the other one, at least Europe, try to reduce the impact of buildings. So there's a gap between ambition and the real market, which is very huge. So I think as European, we are the only region where we discuss about buildings and regulations and sustainability. That's the only country. So that's a very important, this kind of event, also all the research, because that's the only place we can help about how we can build a better building in the future, not only in Europe, but outside Europe. But there is a question, and just to tell you, I'm not a nostalgic. I'm not a nostalgic. But when we talk about innovation, sometimes we always look in front of us, which is, okay, is the future. But I think sometimes innovation is also behind us, because we have this attitude to looking forward. But we think we need to looking back too. Why? Because there was a story of buildings without energy. No, we did for many, many centuries. So energy is really, in the humanity history, is 250 years. But we make buildings in the planet for 1,000 years. How we did before? Why? How we did? So I write a little booklet called "The Future is a Journey to the Past," just to make not a nostalgic analysis, but I'm very curious to know how other people in the past that they design building with no energy, and maybe there are a combination between innovation and knowledge from the past, not to make the same building, but the way they're thinking to make this relation. And there's a beautiful stories. Then I'm not going to tell you all because it would be too long, but just to tell you one story, which I think is very interesting, is the house in the Heist house in Iran. When Marco Polo come from China back to Istanbul, he just sailing to Hormuz, Iran, and then he take a caravan, and then he arrived to Istanbul. During this trip, this journey, he stopped in the middle of Iran, and in the middle of the desert, in 13th century, the people offered to him an ice cream. So how the Persian people make an ice cream in the desert? So it's almost impossible. I'm not going to tell you all the story, then maybe you can buy the book, but it's amazing story how people was able to create a relation, a friendship with nature so strong. They was able to make a building, which is number 6 in the middle. And then they really built a long wall, It's almost 100 meters long. And then behind this wall is a little pool, a few centimeters. And for the effect of the cooling on the sky, which the sky is minus 55 degrees, he take all the heating from the water and ice in the water every night. And after one winter, they fill in the tank, and then the Persian people was able to have an ice cream in the desert when there's a 55 degrees plus. So this we call that how you say in English? It's a sort of intuitive innovation. So they study the climate, they understand, and then creating a building to creating this connection. So of course we don't do ice again like this, but I'm curious to know that the people try to find this relationship, and that was fully passive. So we need to combine again this idea that we design building with this relation and then use some technology. So there are many stories, and the Indian building was fantastic, built on the other side. So they're building palace underground, and then of course every meter you go down on the ground is less, reduce the temperature, and they were able to live in a beautiful palace in the summer in the northwest of India. So there's many stories, but I was curious to know, and I read this book. Is a journey, because it was in 2020. It was impossible for me to do it. But many of these places I visit already, and I try to make this journey to writing the book and tell these 10 stories to tell you how we did before. And I think that's going to be very interesting also to continue the research, because we need also to do passive buildings. But it's another inspiration. It's this we call a by inspiring futures. So all of you know this plant. So I want just to say very simple things. Plants are in the planet from 450 million years. That's the plant. Much, much before than us. Homo sapiens, 300,000. So we have a gap of adaptation, which is huge. And plants, then we can see here, they can tell us many stories. They can tell also a lot of information about design our building. So you can see that plant. So it's a sphere, so which is mean, is not all the time under the sun. And also the leaves are triangular. So that means when the sun turns, half of the leaves is always under shade. So this plant live in a very, very difficult context. It's very hot, but it's designed a shape then able to adapt to that climate. And then is a spine, and the top they're fully, it's a full spine. It's super white because it reflects the sun, vertical sun, so it's trying to absorb less heating. And then there's a spine due all along the plants for one reason, two reasons. One is because it's defend, because avoiding the animals eating the juicy of the plants. But the other, much important, this plant take water from the air, not from the ground. So in the top of the spine, during the change of climate between day and night, is a condensation of water from the air, and this drop go inside the plant. So, how this plant know? How we know? So that means plants, they're adapting for centuries or millions of years to adapting to the climate. So are we able to do that and design our building with this kind of intelligence? So I think that we have a lot of things to learn from what is around of us. And for us, it was inspiring for a project we do in Morocco, where we're using the terracotta facade to absorb humidity and shading complete in the building during the day. And that is inspiring from nature, translating buildings and be a building. So plants are plants, buildings are not plants. Buildings are culture. It's a completely different thing. And then, before I show you something, what these two things have in common: a tree and a buildings. I take some water. They have in common one thing: they don't move; they stay there. So if they don't move, means the plants do a lot of things. Well, transforming CO2 in oxygen, make a shading, humidity, and the roots, they're going to find the minerals and create a humus. So plants do a lot of things. And then if you cut a piece of plants, the branch grow again, and they make a fruit. So it's complex. It make a lot of things. What make our buildings? I say maybe now buildings are better than before, but normally in the past, in the last few centuries, building was hostile to climate. We just ceiling the building. We don't want to know what's happening outside. We put an air conditioning unit. We close the window. We don't want to know anything about the raining, air, ventilation, sun. We don't want to know anything. And that building is our problem, because make building like this is a huge cost in terms of energy and pollution. So, and that building is more like us. If you get something in your brain, you collapse. And if your machine is broken, you cannot live in our building. So you see the gap between the two things. And I think we have a lot of things we can improve in design better building with new generation of material. So what I'm saying is, innovation is very important, but we try to make an innovation also watching what is around of us and learning from that and adapt on design how we make a better building. And then I'll show you some project, and then I was talking to the school. So ARPA is an headquarters for the Agency for the Prevention, Environmental and Energy. So it was a public competition we won many years ago. And this is another problem of Italian context. Now, we design a building to be built in 8 months. So it was a big challenge. All wood construction, prefabricating. So then we take 11 years to do it, which is not very good for this kind of, this Italian process is very complicated. But the project is about, is a roof of 120 chimney. Chimney, they catch the wind and bring the daylighting, as inspiring by the Pakistani city, where they have this kind of a kite. This open in the winter, in the night, to bring the wind inside of the house, and then they close during the day and keeping the cooling inside the house. So you can see when I'm saying the new beauty. This landscape, urban landscape, is mainly do it by climatic strategies, and it's a beautiful cities. No? So that's what I'm calling the new idea of beauty is connected with sustainability. No? So, and these are the chimney and the wood construction, and on the back of the chimney is a little vent you can open and then create ventilation. And the principle is not a zero building, but the chimney in the summer is increasing the ventilation, the natural ventilation, so we can reduce dramatically the standard consumption for cooling, because you cannot do a public building with no mechanical service. That's another point. Now, rules say we need to make sustainable buildings, and regulation, they say the contrary. So you need to fix the temperature and humidity. So the only way you can do is using machine. So that is the little bit paradox of the legislation. And the winter time, the chimney is working like a glass house. So you keeping the hot, and then we mix with the air. So that is only by the design, by the shape of the buildings. No? It's not before make machine. So this is the shape is generating the movement of air. So that's what I think is the importance of the project, the way you design your building. No? And of course, there are two main things in office buildings which people want. Is the quality of the air and the natural light. These are the two fundamental quality of people asking. They want a quality of air, a quality of light. And in the perimeter of the building, it is all photovoltaics in this chimney. And also what we do is a little bit always in a sort of experiment. Of course, you can study daylighting with radiance, with a digital program. But we started many years ago to do this lighting test in a laboratory in an artificial sky. One is in Turin, one is in Lausanne. And then is the way to learn how daylighting works in buildings, because you can scale, you can measure. And I think you can discover a lot of things if you make a model and testing under this, because a little difference of material change completely the diagram of daylighting and change the quality. I think that's what I'm calling is we learn by ourselves, doing things. And this was very important for us to replicate. Or now we're using more digital program, but there was a period of time when we make our model, and then we're testing, and then we learn. Is a knowledge inside of the office, and that is inside of. Of course, it is full of natural light go inside of the buildings. You can see from here. And then back to another story, which is the underground building, which is very fascinating. We're renovating a building in the heart of Milan. It was a building built in the last century, which means also renovation is a part of the sustainability, reusing building, and is a museum dedicated to Etrurian art. So the Etrusci, there was an area of Tuscany. And there was a collection of beautiful objects in a very specific period of time. So it's the 4th and 5th century before Christ. They're all black, so which is make another problem to how to make black object and shine inside a museum and lighting. It's a little bit complicated. But the Etrurian art is, I would tell you that because it's something that for me was very important. The major part of the Etrurian art is about make object to people who start a journey to another life, It's sort of a religion. So the major expression of art or tension was to design object to the dead people, to give to them something to bring to another life. Maybe their real life was very hard. They thinking then the paradise was maybe better, But this tension is creating a beautiful object, so beautiful piece of art. And there's not too many, there's no building remain from that time. Only
only some tomb, no? So this is another major piece in bronze, 50th century before Christ. It's a super incredible technique to make this at that time. And that is the Tombe di Cerveteri. That's the only thing remain for architecture from that time, no? And very inspiring is, stones with a stone roof and greenery on top. No? So we did this museum, which is fully underground, and we made it all in stones. No? This is the building. So it was completely renovated. So underground, you can see the little dome on the garden. Is the underground is pushing up. It's just, I'm there. And then the other floors are dedicated for contemporary art. Okay, this is the renovation of the house upstairs on the first floor. It's all dedicated to artists. And that's the section. So under the building, we creating on -1 is all the museum, and it's made by 30,000 pieces of stones. And it's very organic, so it's underground. It's a travel to a space where you're feeling you're almost in a cave. It's extract from a cave, but you're feeling the space and the stones. They're real, no? And so it's a concrete shell with the structure to keeping all the stones. But what's interesting is the stone, they are not touching together. So I'll show you the picture, maybe it's much more clear. So this is the space underground. So it's not mainly air conditioning because only humidity control. So the air is a ventilating space, and the air go through the stone. Because stone, they are not touching together. There's a gap of 3 millimeters, and the air is in from the floor, from the gap, and then it gets inside recycling the air through the stone. And that is the space. No? And for me remember me a lot of the space underground. No? There's a very history of buildings built underground on rocks. No? And there's all this collection. But I was working with an acoustic engineer, because if you're working in domes, the acoustic is a problem, because all the waves going back in the same point, and it's an echo. No? So top of this dome are made with panels on glass, recycling glass, which is absorb the acoustic. And I get a very big discussion about being not too precise, because I like the idea that you're feeling, you're walking underground, the sound is different. It's different from outside. You need to get this kind of imperfection. Okay. And then there's another project which is almost complete. It's a tower in Milan. And this, it become the discussion we had before, is about the beam technology. It's in the center of Milan. There is a new area close to the station where they build many skyscrapers. And so my office was changed completely the tools, because we all, as many work in AutoCAD for many years, and then we were asked to work in BIM, and then we transform all the office in BIM. So it was 120 people. We take 2 years to make all these formations, and we have we have a BIM coordinator and a BIM manager in the office to managing this, because I still thinking that an architect need to be supervise all the process, because we need to know how things are built. And BIM for us was a very, very strong, powerful tools, because we was able to see every single details and every single problems, and connection between mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, structural engineer, and facade engineer were all together to watching and control is a kind of a significant work for an office, but I think that was the only way to controlling the geometry and also the conflict inside of the construction. No? So it's I'm still feeling is a very powerful tool, and I think it's very, very useful because make us to controlling the design. Of course, need a lot of formation, I don't say in English, and that's the tower. No? It's the complexity of geometry was only possible to design by using that tool because we design every single detail, but the construction company make the structure using our file. So there was only one file for everybody, which is make things controlling the process, no? Which doesn't take any problem for creativity, but it takes a very good method for controlling the design. No? Now it's almost done. So design towers are very complicated, and also in terms of performance is complicated. And this is a double skin facade, so there's a thermal facade inside and one single glass outside. So it's a gap between the two about 80 centimeters. And because it's facing south, we say the south facade is always the most difficult for high-rise building, but not from the summertime, but the winter time when the sun is low. You get the sun going inside, so you need to cooling one side and heating another side. So we decided to create a sort of an empty atrium. It's an atrium of 17 floors, which is a sort of a climate moderating. So we collecting heating, but at the same time we ventilating and recuperating the cooling, the heat to put in the system. No? And of course generating an amazing space. I will show you the latest picture. So it's an empty space, which is moderating between offices and the facade, but also is quite spectacular. No? This is last week from the ground level to watching up. And the top of the floor is a glass house. Of course, we cannot cooling or heating that space too big. And we're using a technique of a glass house. So it's ventilated, and the roof is all photovoltaic, so with the shading and producing energy. Of course, that's not enough for running the office, but enough to running all the public spaces. And now we're just bringing plants up on the top. And this is the last week in the context of this area where there's many other skyscrapers. So, and back to the last two projects. One is a school we built a few years ago after the earthquake. It is a wood construction. That was quite interesting project because we designed all the elements and then was sent directly to the company who was cutting all the pieces of wood. So it shortened the process between us and the construction. So I'll talk about the education. Architecture is the third educator. This is the founder of Reggio Children's. It's one of the most important educational organizations for kindergarten. And was inspired by the story. That is the nice part of being an architect. You need to tell the story, and then you need to find the story to make your buildings, which is, in this case, was a designer school for kids from 0 to 3 years. It's so important for them. As you know, this period of time is the time of kids elaborating imagination, which is so mean is a part of their time is in the school. So you need to design a beautiful school for that. And we're inspired by the story of Pinocchio that I'm sure you know. There's an amazing page in the book of Pinocchio, which is a dramatic story, because it's a whale which is eating Pinocchio, and then Pinocchio stayed for 2 years inside of a whale. So for kids, it must be kind of terrifying to know the animals eating. And then his father was trying to find it. So anyway, this story is beautiful. It's very, very emotional page. And then we was inspired by the idea to living on a whale. We designed this building. And then is all these elements, vertical elements, are structural in wood construction. And also it's because this is the landscape of the plain of the Po in Italy,
what is vertical in this landscape? Trees. The only verticality is all trees, very regular, and sometimes some tower from some church. So I thought this is very common in your vision. When you walk in, you're traveling in the plane, and you only see this poplier, there's all these trees, a repetition. And I thought it was something that people remember. And then if you design a building with this repetition, it's something then connecting to the landscape of this area. And then it was a beautiful story with bureaucracy. I know France have a lot of bureaucracy too, but I think Italy won. In any case, it can win because it's exhausting to be an architect in Italy, I tell you. So we did that building for the energy agency. We take 11 years. This take a little bit less time. We did in 2 years. And other story building take 10 years. So it's very difficult to be an architect in Italy if you build one building every 10 years, because our life would be very short in terms of numbers of buildings. And the story of this building was difficult to approve by the rules because the people on the local government, they don't know if this curve is a wall or is the pavement. So we get a long 3-month discussion about this is a wall or is the pavement or is the floor. And there's no regulation. There's no regulation. They say a wall can be a floor and the floor can be a wall. So just to give you the idea as to how complicated transforming all the rules to make new buildings. And this was fully, we only use photovoltaics and also geothermal because we are in an area where it's easy to do it, and using rainwater for toilets. And I think why it's important for kids, because they go to toilet and the teacher say, these toilets go with the rainwater. And they go back home and say to the family, Mama, how toilets work? It's a potable water. What? Why we don't use rainwater? So you're creating a school where this generation of kids, they become more aware about the environment. So that's a very, very important to do school in this kind of ideas. And then it was a story about the transparency, because it's important to see all these whales. And then for me it was important for one reason, and the reason is because I still remember my kindergarten. I don't know how many remembers your kindergarten, but I still remember. Because I discovered 50 years later that this kindergarten, when there was kids, was designed by an architect, a modernist, which is mean buildings they don't move, but they travel in the memory. And memory can be beautiful or can be a nightmare. So I think architects are very dangerous people, very dangerous, because they can make beautiful things or can live forever some terrible nightmare. So that's why I think you need to be sense of responsibility when you design a building, because it's more than existing. It's what you leave for the futures, the memory of buildings. And I go very quick now. I have only 10 minutes. And then one of these Italian beautiful stories. In Italy, you cannot do anything anywhere, in principle. Then there's some possibility. In the historical center, impossible. So we did this project in this little village close to Pisa. We are not in the best Tuscany, but it's a nice place. And the mayor, and that's interesting, this comune, they have, I don't know how you can in French, they collecting rubbish, like say that. So they have a place where they're collecting rubbish, and they make a lot of money, because you need to pay to give the, and also they produce the energy with photovoltaics, and the people from the village, they all have a quote, so they all have some return in terms of money. So during the COVID, the government gave it to the people 600 euro during the COVID time, and he was able to give it to people 2,800 euro because it was supported by energy production and the waste collector. So that means the two things can be a great business in terms of social impact. So he take the money for that. He spent 6 million to make the renovation, and they own that building, you can see, to make social housing, so help people living there, and a library, and also an exhibition space. You know? So that's the detail. It was abandoned. It was owned by the public, the local authorities. So, and then that's what we did. So we're renovating old buildings, of course, with all this performance and all the regulation. No? And then we had this sort of a bridge, just cantilevered to the landscape. Under this is a library for the community. And strange enough, the power of architecture is this. In a little village like this, you can build something like this, and people moving from other small cities, or Pisa, or Livorno, because they want to bring the kids in that place, And then is the cantilever. So, and it's a beautiful landscape, and then underground you can go from outside, you enter, and then you can find the space. It's a library, co-working, it's a little bar, and then for young people living in this village, they can have this kind of facility, and it's a library, and then a contemporary art exhibition all the time. So it's kind of an interesting way to using the public buildings. No? And of course, what's happened in the end, then artists using that walls. That is the view from the bridge to the city. And what's happened is the people make cinema. And then there was a party, there was a dinner. So that space generated something that was not there before. So that's, I think, is the amazing of designing public space. No? So what we are doing with research and development mission, I go very quick. So why we do that? We did because we like to discovery and researching things. And I'm going a little bit quick. I'm late. So what's happened, the research development, they do also the sustainability part of our project. So they analyze the site, the climate, they give you some indication, and for the designer, the director, they're using this information to design. But we did that. We designed a house fully in earth, 3D printed by using earth, only earth, there was nothing else. Of course, the interesting is to use a new technology with the old material that exists everywhere in the planet. And it's not about the 3D printer. 3D printer is a very basic machine. It's about the digital, how you design and how you analyze all the performance. So the idea is that if you make a house in earth, when it's finished their life, they back to the earth. Maybe in a very sensible place or in emergency. And it's a very quick video in 1 minute. This was done with the Wasp. It's a company who's sort of a crazy guy in Romagna, close to Bologna. He made a printer, 3D printer, and one day said, "Oh, I'm going to print one very big. I make a house," And then we designed with him. But also was the idea to give an answer about all this idea of zero, how we make a building with zero impact, with zero impact CO2 emissions on building materials. Well, mainly is digging a hole in a garden and using that earth to make a building. is that in the end. So, and that was the work from starting with the school. So we're working with the student on this project, and then R&D take over and then finalize the construction. And that's why is School of Sustainability Foundation was creating, because as I'm saying, we not only design for the next generation, we design with the next generation, because the place is not only we teaching them, we share with them, because also we share the vision of the future of the young people. It's the future I see is different from the future of a 27 years old architect see, it's different. So it's done inside of the office, which of course created a lot of problems, but I think for young architects it's nice, engineer to live inside our space. And it's a master program, so it's 1 full year from October to June, and we're now working to be a fully diploma from university. But we have a period of time, which is the first 3 months, is all about foundation course, which is parametric design, healthy material, design for circularity, green building management, environmental design. So we're teaching for 4 months, 3 months, from October to January, the basic of fundamental elements. And then these are teaching with different people who come from different backgrounds. And I think it's very important to starting with, some foundation ideas, but also tools. So you need to know parametric design. If you don't know, you need to know how to design your buildings. And then we have 4 tracks with architecture and social business. We mainly work on the idea of the impact of the social business in terms of the architecture. So we do working in communities in many parts of the world. Post-carbon architecture is mainly about design high-rise building with 0 impact. The right of quality shelter is about design house for people that don't have house in different parts of the country, and design product and system from circular economy. So this is the main track, and students, they can choose. So like the Tekla house started from this group, and now we design a small village for a community Rome in Naples. And then post-carbon we designed with the two architects that came from 2 different parts of the world, from Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, and Tehran, how to design this building. And for the product, with Artemide, our partner, we design a lamp that is make light in the waters and cleaning the water by bacteria. And using recycling printing materials. So that is. But the idea of the school was mainly to cover a gap between academia, which we are not academic, so is out of academia. They are not yet on the world of profession. Is an area between, which is the school covered the knowledge and the experience as students from many countries. And we have partners. This year we're working with B&W to a research project in acoustic urban mapping. So city have a smell, but also they have a sound, and we are studying that with them. And so Unipol is an insurance company for the generations. And the main point is give to them the chance to find a job. That's the point. And there are more and more offices or company, industry, they're looking for this green manager, or people know about SDG, or they have an idea what will be sustainability in the future. So we have a partnership about different offices and company, and many other partners and engineering and company, and we bring the knowledge inside of industry and tell to them what is innovation. And I think this relation between industry, they are obliged to go on in innovation, and the school is important because they exchange what is the latest things and the vision for the future. And that is the last year's finished courses. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Sorry, I was a little bit late.